The dust from the eastbound train had barely settled when Temperance Walker stepped onto the weathered platform of Red Rock Station, clutching her 6-month-old son to her chest with one arm while struggling with a worn carpet bag in the other. The year was 1878, and she had traveled across 3 states with nothing but desperate hope and a locket containing a faded photograph. The baby fussed against her, his tiny face reddened from the heat and travel. Temperance kissed his forehead and whispered, "Hush now, Illy. We're almost there." Her voice betrayed more confidence than she felt. The truth was they had nowhere to go, and the last of her money had been spent on the train ticket to this remote corner of Texas. The station was little more than a wooden shack with a telegraph office attached. A few horses were hitched to posts, and a dusty carriage waited nearby, but there were few people about in the midday heat. Temperance lowered herself onto a bench at the edge of the platform, arranging Illy on her lap. His blue eyes, so much like his father's, looked up at her trustingly. "Just rest here a while," she told him softly. "Something will come along. Someone will help us." The words sounded hollow even to her own ears. Illy's father, a drummer who had promised Temperance the world, had disappeared when she told him about the baby. Her parents had turned her out, unwilling to harbor a daughter who had brought such shame upon their respected Boston name. For months, she had worked as a seamstress in a small Illinois town, saving every penny until she heard rumors of work in the burgeoning cattle towns of Texas. The sun beat down mercilessly as Temperance watched the empty road leading from the station. She had no plan beyond finding work, any work that would allow her to keep her son with her. Her dress, once fine but now travel-worn, stuck to her back with sweat. She reached into her carpet bag for the canteen of water, only to find it nearly empty. "Madam, you look like you could use some help." Temperance looked up to see a man standing before her. He was tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in trail-worn clothes, denim pants, a faded red shirt, and a dust-covered Stetson that he removed as he approached. His face was tanned and weathered, but his eyes were kind beneath the brim of his hat. He looked to be in his early 30s, with a full beard that couldn't hide the strong line of his jaw. "I'm fine, thank you," Temperance answered automatically, though she was anything but. Pride was all she had left. "Begging your pardon, but you don't look fine," the man said gently. "You and the little one been waiting long?" Temperance hesitated. "A few hours. I'm expecting someone." The lie came easily. She'd learned to protect herself. The man nodded slowly, clearly not believing her. "I see. Well, it's awful hot today. My wagon's just over there." "Least I could do is offer you both some fresh water while you wait." Before Temperance could answer, Illy began to cry, a thin, reedy sound that tore at her heart. She'd fed him the last of their food on the train hours ago. "Please," she said finally, "some water would be welcome." The man nodded and walked to his wagon, returning with a full canteen and a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "Got some jerky and corn bread too if you're hungry." Temperance wanted to refuse, but Illy's cries grew louder. "Thank you, Mr. Colt, Wade Colt. I've got a ranch about 10 miles north of here." He handed her the food and water, then crouched down to be at eye level with her and the baby. "What's his name?" "Illy," she answered, wetting her handkerchief with water to dab at the baby's hot face. "And I'm Temperance Walker." "Pleased to meet you both. Mind if I sit a spell?" Without waiting for permission, he settled onto the bench beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. As Temperance took a long drink of water, Wade studied her. Despite the dust of travel, her beauty was evident. Auburn hair pulled back in a simple bun, delicate features, and green eyes that held both weariness and determination. "You're not expecting anyone, are you, Miss Walker?" he asked quietly. Temperance stiffened. I don't believe that's any of your concern, Mr. Colt. No, it surely isn't, he agreed amiably. Except it'll be dark in a few hours, and this isn't the safest place for a woman and baby to be stranded. The next train doesn't come through till Thursday. Temperance felt her carefully constructed facade beginning to crumble. 3 days. How would she manage for 3 days? Wade continued, his voice low and kind. There's a boarding house in town, but it's not much, and Mrs. Haverly, who runs it, doesn't take kindly to babies. The saloons offer rooms, but he trailed off, not needing to explain why those weren't suitable. I'll find something, Temperance insisted, though her voice wavered. We'll be fine. Wade was quiet for a long moment, seeming to weigh his words carefully. I've got a big house, Miss Walker. Too big for just one man. My sister lived with me until she married a shopkeeper in San Antonio last year. He turned to look at her directly. There's a cottage on my property, used to be for the foreman before he built his own place closer to the north pasture. It's small but clean. You and the boy could stay there until you figure out your next steps. Temperance looked at him sharply. She'd encountered enough men to recognize the usual predatory gleam, the expectation of something in return for kindness. But Wade Colt's eyes held only genuine concern. Why would you offer such a thing to strangers? She asked. Wade shrugged. I was raised to help folks in need, and that boy. His gaze softened as he looked at Ali, who had calmed and was now chewing on his fist. He reminds me of my nephew. Temperance hesitated. The offer was tempting shelter, safety, but she'd learned the hard way that nothing came without a price. There would be no expectations, Mr. Colt, she asked carefully. Wade's face reddened slightly, but he held her gaze. None whatsoever, Miss Walker. You'd have your privacy. The cottage is a good quarter-mile from the main house. I won't intrude unless invited. Illy began to fuss again, and Temperance bounced him gently on her knee. The sun was beginning to lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the platform. What choice did she have? I can cook and clean, she offered, and I'm skilled with a needle. I could earn my keep until I find proper work. Wade nodded. That seems fair, though it's not necessary. My housekeeper, Mrs. Rodriguez, handles most things, but she might welcome the help. He stood and extended his hand. So shall we go home, Miss Walker? Temperance looked at his offered hand, calloused and strong. Taking it felt momentous, like stepping off a cliff. But as Illy whimpered against her, she knew she had to take this chance. Yes, Mr. Colt, thank you. Wade smiled, the expression transforming his serious face. He'll grow up on my land then, he said, nodding toward Illy. At least for a while, plenty of fresh air and room to run when he's older. Something in the way he said it with such casual certainty made Temperance's throat tighten. She stood, gathering her carpet bag and adjusting Illy on her hip. Wade reached for the bag. Let me take that for you. As they walked toward his wagon, Temperance couldn't help feeling that her life had just changed irrevocably. Whether for better or worse remained to be seen. Wade's wagon was sturdy and well-maintained, with a canvas cover providing shade in the back. He helped Temperance climb onto the seat, then carefully handed her Illy before climbing up beside her. It's about an hour's ride, he explained as he took the reins. Not the smoothest road, but we'll take it slow. As they pulled away from the station, Temperance looked back at the bench where she had sat with no prospects and nowhere to go. Now she was headed to a stranger's ranch, putting her fate and that of her son in the hands of a man she'd just met. The thought should have terrified her, but oddly, she felt calmer than she had in months. The landscape opened up as they traveled, the scrubby terrain giving way to rolling pastures dotted with cattle. In the distance, blue mountains shimmered in the heat. Beautiful country, Wade commented, following her gaze. Harsh sometimes, but honest. What it takes, it gives back tenfold if you respect it. How long have you lived here? Temperance asked, genuinely curious. Going on 8 years now. Came out after the war with not much more than the clothes on my back. Worked as a ranch hand, saved every penny. When old man Hargrove decided to sell up and head to California, I managed to scrape together enough for a down payment on his smallest parcel, about 100 acres. He smiled at the memory. Everyone said I was a fool, that the land was too rocky, too dry, but I found water where others hadn't bothered to look, and now— He gestured to the healthy cattle grazing nearby. Now it's over 2,000 acres. The Circle C is one of the most prosperous spreads in the county. Temperance was impressed despite herself. You built all this yourself. Had help along the way, Wade admitted. Good men who believed in the work, but yes, it's mine. There was pride in his voice, but not boastfulness. What about you, Miss Walker? Where do you call home? Temperance stiffened. Nowhere at present. I was raised in Boston, but that life is behind me now. Wade seemed to sense her reluctance to elaborate. Well, Texas has a way of adopting folks. Might be you'll find a home here. They fell into companionable silence as the wagon rolled on. Illy, soothed by the motion, fell asleep in Temperance's arms. She studied his peaceful face, wondering what this new chapter would bring for them both. When the ranch house finally came into view, Temperance couldn't suppress a gasp of surprise. She had expected something modest, but the 2-story structure was impressive, built of native stone and timber, with a wide porch wrapping around the front and one side. Several outbuildings dotted the property, and a large barn stood nearby. It's beautiful, she said softly. Wade looked pleased. Built most of it myself, with help from the hands during the slow seasons. The original house was just 4 rooms, but I kept adding on. Thought I'd have a family to fill it someday. There was a hint of something like regret in his voice, but it passed quickly. The cottage is just beyond that stand of oak trees. We'll get you settled in there first, then come back for supper if you're up to it. The cottage proved to be a charming 1-room structure with a small covered porch. Inside was simple but comfortable: a bed with a colorful quilt, a table with 2 chairs, a small stove, and a rocking chair near the single window. A curtained alcove contained a washstand with a pitcher and basin. It's not much, Wade said, setting her bag down, but it's clean and dry. The pump out back has good sweet water, and there's an outhouse just past those bushes. Mrs. Rodriguez stocked the pantry this morning. She comes by on Mondays to clean, but I'll tell her you're here tomorrow. She can help you with anything you need. Temperance turned slowly, taking in the space that would be their home for now. After months of uncertainty, even this simple shelter felt like luxury. It's perfect, Mr. Colt. Thank you. Wade nodded, seeming a bit awkward now that they had arrived. I'll leave you to get settled. Supper's usually at 6, but no need to come up tonight if you're tired from traveling. I can bring something down later. That's very kind, but I think I'd like to stretch my legs after we rest a bit. We'll come up at 6 if that's all right. Of course. Wade headed for the door, then paused. Oh, there are some baby things in the trunk under the window. Clothes and such that my sister left when my nephew outgrew them. You're welcome to anything that might fit the little one. With that, he was gone, leaving Temperance alone with her sleeping son and a curious feeling of hope that she hadn't experienced in a very long time. As promised, the trunk contained an assortment of baby clothes, most in good condition. Temperance selected a clean gown for Illy and laid him gently on the bed, surrounding him with pillows so he wouldn't roll off while she freshened up. The cool water from the pitcher felt heavenly on her dusty skin. She changed into her one other dress, a simple blue cotton that had seen better days but was at least clean. Illy woke as she was changing him, his face scrunching in confusion at the unfamiliar surroundings. "This is our new home, sweet boy," she told him, lifting him to her shoulder. "At least for now. And Mr. Colt seems like a good man, doesn't he?" Illy gurgled in response, his tiny fingers grabbing at her hair. Temperance laughed and kissed his cheek, feeling lighter than she had in months. They were safe, at least for the moment. They had shelter and food. It wasn't a permanent solution, but it was a reprieve, and she was grateful for it. At 5:45, Temperance set out for the main house, carrying Illy. The evening was cooling, with a gentle breeze rustling through the oak trees. The path was well-worn and easy to follow, winding past a kitchen garden and a small orchard before opening onto the rear of the house, where a covered porch held several chairs and a swing. Before she could knock, the door opened, revealing a plump, middle-aged woman with dark hair streaked with silver, dressed in a simple cotton dress with an apron. Her warm brown eyes crinkled as she smiled. "You must be Miss Walker. I am Sophia Rodriguez. Mr. Colt told me you would be joining us." Her English was accented but clear. "And this must be the little one. May I?" She held out her arms toward Illy. Temperance hesitated only briefly before handing over her son. Mrs. Rodriguez cooed and bounced him expertly. "Such a handsome boy." "He reminds me of my grandson," she said, leading Temperance into a large, warm kitchen filled with delicious smells. "You are just in time. Mr. Colt is washing up." The kitchen was the heart of the house, with a large wooden table, a massive cookstove, and open shelves lined with dishes and preserves. A doorway led to what appeared to be a formal dining room, but the table in the kitchen was set for 3. "We eat in here most nights, Mrs. Rodriguez explained, seeing Temperance's glance toward the dining room. "Much cozier. The dining room is for special occasions only." The sound of boots on the floor announced Wade's arrival. He had changed into clean-clothes dark pants and a freshly pressed white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal tanned forearms. His hair was damp, and he had trimmed his beard. "Miss Walker," he greeted her with a nod. "I see you've met Mrs. Rodriguez. I hope you found everything you needed at the cottage." "Yes, thank you. It's very comfortable." Wade's eyes softened as he watched Mrs. Rodriguez with Illy. "Looks like the little fella's made a friend already. Babies know who loves them, Mrs. Rodriguez declared, settling Illy into a cradle that Wade must have brought down from the attic. It sat in the corner of the kitchen, within easy view of the table. Supper was simple but delicious: roast chicken, potatoes, fresh bread, and green beans from the garden. Temperance hadn't eaten so well in months, and she had to remind herself not to appear too eager. Mrs. Rodriguez watched with approval as she ate, occasionally urging her to take more. The conversation was easy, with Mrs. Rodriguez doing most of the talking, filling Temperance in on the rhythms of ranch life. The best days to do laundry. Not Tuesday, when the cattle sometimes came close to the creek and stirred up the mud. And which of the hands' wives might have worked for a skilled seamstress? Elena Garcia's expecting her 4th in December, and Maria Diaz just got engaged to that new hand from Oklahoma. "Both will need dresses," she informed Temperance. "And Mr. Colt himself could use some new shirts. He works them to rags before replacing them." Wade looked slightly embarrassed. "Mrs. Rodriguez thinks I don't know how to shop for myself." "You don't," the housekeeper said flatly. "Remember those boots you ordered from the catalog? 2 different sizes," Wade laughed, and Temperance found herself smiling at their easy rapport. It was clear the housekeeper was more than an employee. She was family. After dinner, Mrs. Rodriguez refused Temperance's offer to help with dishes. "You rest tonight. Tomorrow I will show you everything. Go sit on the porch, the evening is beautiful." Wade led the way, carrying a sleeping Illy in his strong arms with surprising gentleness. Temperance followed, noticing for the first time the details of the house's handcrafted furniture, braided rugs, and landscape paintings that captured the beauty of the surrounding countryside. The porch swing was wide enough for two, and Wade gestured for her to sit while he gently transferred Illy to her lap. Instead of joining her on the swing, he took a chair nearby, respectful of her space. The view was spectacular, rolling pastures bathed in the golden light of sunset, with mountains in the distance turning purple against the darkening sky. Cattle dotted the landscape, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. "It's so peaceful," Temperance murmured. Wade nodded. "That's why I chose this spot for the house. Best view on the property." He was quiet for a moment before asking, "If you don't mind my asking, what brought you all the way from Boston to Red Rock, Miss Walker?" Temperance tensed, but she supposed she owed him some explanation after his generosity. "I was seeking a fresh start. There was nothing left for us in the East." Wade seemed to consider this, then nodded. "Sometimes a fresh start is exactly what a person needs." He didn't press for details, and Temperance was grateful for his discretion. "What about you, Mr. Colt? Have you always been a rancher?" Wade leaned back in his chair. "No, madam. I was studying law back in Virginia when the war broke out. Served 4 years with the Army of Northern Virginia. After it was over, there wasn't much to go back to. My family's farm was gone, parents both dead from fever." His voice was matter-of-fact, without self-pity. "Headed west like so many others. Worked odd jobs until I found my way here. Turns out I've got more of a knack for raising cattle than arguing cases." Temperance studied him in the fading light. There was more to Wade Colt than met the eye: education and refinement beneath the rugged exterior of a rancher. "It's remarkable what you've built here," she said sincerely. Wade shrugged, but she could tell he was pleased by the compliment. "Been lucky in some ways. Had good men working with me, fair weather more often than not, and avoided most of the trouble that plagues these parts." "Trouble?" "Rustlers mostly. Some of the bigger outfits north of here have had problems, and there's always the usual difficulties: drought, disease, market prices." He smiled slightly. "But that's ranching. Never dull." They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell. Stars appeared in the vast Texas sky, more than Temperance had ever seen in Boston. "I should get Illy to bed," she said finally, though she was reluctant to leave the peaceful porch. Wade stood immediately. "Of course. Let me walk you back to the cottage." Temperance started to protest that it wasn't necessary, but the path was dark now, and she wasn't familiar with the property yet. "Thank you." Wade lit a lantern and led the way, keeping his pace slow to accommodate her and the sleeping baby. When they reached the cottage, he handed her the lantern and opened the door. "I'll have one of the hands bring over a proper crib tomorrow," he said, "and Mrs. Rodriguez will show you around. If there's anything you need, anything at all, don't hesitate to ask." "You've been very kind, Mr. Colt." Wade shook his head. "Just doing what anyone would do." Temperance knew that wasn't true. Many would have left her at the station, or worse, offered help with dishonorable intentions. "Nevertheless, I'm grateful." Wade tipped his hat. "Good night, Miss Walker. Good night, little Illy." As he walked away into the darkness, Temperance stood in the doorway watching until he disappeared among the trees. For the first time in months, she felt something like peace settle over her. Whatever tomorrow might bring, tonight they were safe. She laid Illy in the center of the bed and arranged pillows around him to keep him secure, then prepared herself for sleep. As she blew out the lamp, she found herself wondering about Wade Colt, his kindness to strangers, the hint of sadness behind his eyes, the gentle way he had held her son. Dangerous thoughts for a woman in her position. She needed to remember that this arrangement was temporary, that her priority was finding work and building a life for Ellie on her own terms. She couldn't afford to form attachments, not when her future was so uncertain. Still, as she drifted off to sleep, it was Wade's face she saw, his kind eyes and the way they had softened when he looked at Ellie. The next few days established a rhythm to their lives at the Circle C. Mrs. Rodriguez took Temperance under her wing, showing her the workings of the ranch house and introducing her to the wives of the ranch hands who lived in small houses scattered across the property. True to his word, Wade was respectful of Temperance's privacy. He came by the cottage only to deliver the promised crib, a beautiful piece of furniture that he had apparently made himself years before in anticipation of his own family, and to check occasionally that she had everything she needed. Their interactions were cordial but brief, with Wade seemingly determined to give her space. It was through Mrs. Rodriguez that Temperance learned more about him. The housekeeper had known Wade since he first came to Texas, had worked for the previous owner of the ranch, and had watched Wade build his empire from nothing. "He works too hard," she confided to Temperance as they hung laundry on the line behind the main house. "Always the first up, last to bed. The men respect him because he never asks them to do what he wouldn't do himself." "He never married?" Temperance asked, trying to sound merely curious. Mrs. Rodriguez shook her head. "There was a young lady once, daughter of a banker in town. They were engaged briefly, but she decided ranch life was not for her, wanted him to sell everything and move to Austin to become a businessman." She made a dismissive noise. As if Mr. Colt could ever be happy behind a desk. She did not understand him at all. "When was this?" 3 years ago. "He has not courted anyone seriously since, though not for lack of opportunities. Half the unmarried women in the county would set their caps for him if he showed any interest." Mrs. Rodriguez gave Temperance a knowing look. "He is a good man, Miss Walker, kind, honorable, not like some." Temperance busied herself with a sheet, avoiding the older woman's gaze. "Mr. Colt has been very generous to Ellie and me. I'm grateful for his help while I find my feet." Mrs. Rodriguez smiled but said nothing more on the subject. By the end of her first week at the Circle C, Temperance had received her first sewing commission, a dress for Elena Garcia's eldest daughter, who was celebrating her quinceañera in August. Word spread quickly, and soon Temperance had enough work to keep her needle flying for weeks. She set up a small sewing area in the cottage, working during Ellie's naps and in the evenings. Wade provided her with a wagon and a gentle mare named Daisy that she could drive into town when necessary. Red Rock was a small but growing community, with a general store, a bank, 2 churches, 3 saloons, and various other businesses serving the surrounding ranches. Temperance quickly found her services in demand there as well, particularly for fine embroidery and delicate mending that the local seamstress couldn't manage with her failing eyesight. Life settled into a pleasant routine. Temperance and Ellie typically had breakfast at the cottage, then would walk up to the main house where she would help Mrs. Rodriguez with household tasks until noon. After lunch, she would work on her sewing while Ellie napped, and in the evenings, they often joined Wade and Mrs. Rodriguez for dinner in the kitchen. These meals became Temperance's favorite part of the day. Wade was an engaging conversationalist, well-read despite his isolation, and genuinely interested in her opinions. They discussed books, current events, gleaned from newspapers that arrived weeks late, and occasionally debated politics, though always good-naturedly. Lee thrived in the ranch environment. At 7 months, he was sitting up on his own, babbling constantly and developing a distinct personality, sunny and curious, with a hearty laugh that never failed to make Wade smile. To Temperance's surprise and gratitude, Wade seemed genuinely fond of the baby. He would often take Illy onto his lap after dinner, bouncing him on his knee or showing him simple games that delighted the child. "He's a natural with the boy," Mrs. Rodriguez commented one afternoon as they watched through the kitchen window while Wade showed Illy a new foal in the corral near the house. The big man was holding Illy securely in one arm, guiding the baby's hand to gently touch the foal's soft muzzle. "He'd make a good father," Temperance said without thinking, then blushed when Mrs. Rodriguez gave her a knowing look. "Yes, he would," the housekeeper agreed. "He just needs the right woman to see it." As June gave way to July, the Texas heat intensified. Wade was busy from dawn to dusk, working with his hands to move cattle to higher pastures where the grass was still green. Temperance caught glimpses of him riding out early in the morning or returning at dusk, often covered in dust and visibly exhausted. Despite his fatigue, he always made time for Illy. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Temperance found him asleep on the porch swing with Illy nestled against his chest, both of them snoring softly. The sight caused a strange tightening in her chest, a feeling she wasn't ready to examine too closely. It was during a violent summer storm that Temperance's carefully maintained distance from Wade Colt began to crumble. The rain had started in the afternoon, a welcome relief from the heat, but by evening it had developed into a full-blown tempest with cracking thunder and lightning that split the sky. Temperance had just put Illy to bed when a particularly vicious bolt struck somewhere nearby, followed by an explosive crack. The cottage shuddered, and Illy woke with a startled cry. As Temperance went to comfort him, she heard pounding on the door. Wade stood on the porch, rain streaming from his hat and slicker. "Lightning hit the oak by the cottage," he shouted over the storm. "It's not safe here. Grab what you need for the night you're coming to the main house." Temperance didn't argue. She quickly bundled Illy in a blanket, grabbed a few necessities, and followed Wade into the deluge. He held a lantern in one hand and wrapped his other arm around her shoulders, shielding her and Illy as best he could from the driving rain. They were soaked by the time they reached the house. Mrs. Rodriguez met them at the door with towels and exclamations of concern. She whisked Illy away to dry him by the kitchen fire while Wade showed Temperance to a bedroom upstairs. "My sister's room," he explained, lighting the lamps. "Everything you might need should be here. The bathroom is just down the hall. We've got indoor plumbing, one of my few luxuries." He hesitated at the door. "I'll check on the cottage once the storm passes, but you should stay here tonight regardless. Those old oaks can be treacherous in high winds, even without lightning strikes." "Thank you," Temperance said, suddenly acutely aware of her wet dress clinging to her frame and Wade's proximity. "For coming to get us, I mean. You must have been watching from the house." "I worry about you out there alone," he admitted, then quickly added, "both of you, I mean. It's my responsibility to ensure your safety while you're on my property." Before Temperance could respond, Mrs. Rodriguez appeared with Illy, now dry and dressed in a clean gown. "This little one is ready for bed, but perhaps his mama would like to change first. I've laid out some of Rebecca's things on the bed that might fit you." Wade excused himself, and Temperance changed gratefully into the borrowed nightgown and robe. The storm continued to rage outside, but the house stood solid against it. After settling Illy in the middle of the large four-poster bed, Temperance made her way downstairs, following the sound of voices to the study. Wade sat before a crackling fire, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He rose when she entered, gesturing for her to take the armchair opposite his. "Illy's asleep?" he asked. Yes, the excitement tired him out. Temperance settled into the chair, extending her hands toward the fire. "This is a lovely room." The study was clearly Wade's sanctuary, walls lined with bookshelves, a large desk positioned to take advantage of the natural light from the windows, and comfortable furniture arranged around the fireplace. Family photographs in silver frames adorned the mantel. Wade followed her gaze to the photographs. "My parents," he said, pointing to a formal portrait of a handsome couple, "and that's my sister Rebecca with her husband and son. You must miss them." "Every day," Wade admitted. "Rebecca writes weekly, but it's not the same as having her here." The firelight played across his features, softening them. For the first time, Temperance allowed herself to fully acknowledge how handsome he was, not in a conventional, polished way, but with the rugged attractiveness of a man comfortable in his skin and sure of his place in the world. "May I ask you something, Miss Walker?" Wade's voice broke into her thoughts. "Of course. What's your plan? Long term, I mean. You've been here over a month now, and while I'm happy to have you stay as long as you wish, I get the sense you're a woman who likes to have a direction." The question caught Temperance off guard. The truth was, she had been so focused on survival for so long that making plans beyond the immediate future seemed like a luxury she couldn't afford. "I don't know," she admitted. "When I came west, I thought I'd find work, save enough to eventually rent a small place of our own. But now—" She trailed off, uncertain how to continue. "Now," Wade prompted gently. "Now Ellie has a safe place to sleep and enough to eat. I'm earning money with my needle. The cottage is more of a home than anywhere we've been since he was born. It feels ungrateful to want more when we already have so much thanks to your generosity." Wade leaned forward, his expression earnest. "It's not ungrateful to have dreams, Miss Walker. Everyone deserves a future of their own choosing. What about you, Mr. Colt? What are your dreams for the future?" Wade looked surprised by the question, as though no one had asked him that in a long time. "I've been so focused on building the ranch, making it successful." He paused, staring into the fire. "I suppose I always imagined I'd have a family to share it with someday. A wife, children. But the years pass and the right opportunity hasn't presented itself." There was something in the way he said it, a hint of loneliness that matched her own, that made Temperance's heart constrict. "It's not too late," she offered softly. Wade's eyes met hers across the space between them, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits. The moment was broken by a tremendous crash of thunder that shook the windows. Temperance jumped, and Wade was on his feet instantly. "You should check on Ellie," he said, "and get some rest. It's been a long day." Temperance nodded and rose, but at the door she turned back. "Mr. Colt." "Yes, thank you, not just for tonight, but for everything. You've been kinder to us than anyone has in a very long time." Wade's expression softened. "It's been my pleasure, Miss Walker, truly." Upstairs, Ellie slept peacefully despite the storm raging outside. Temperance lay beside him, listening to the rain pound against the roof and window panes. Her conversation with Wade replayed in her mind, particularly the moment when their eyes had met across the firelight. There had been something there, something dangerous and exhilarating that she wasn't sure she was ready to acknowledge. The storm had passed by morning, leaving behind a washed, clean world and cooler temperatures. Temperance woke to find Ellie already awake, playing with his toes and babbling happily. After dressing them both in yesterday's now dry clothes, they ventured downstairs to find Wade and Mrs. Rodriguez in the kitchen. "The cottage is fine," Wade informed her as he poured her a cup of coffee. "The oak lost a major limb, but it didn't hit the structure. I've got the hands clearing it this morning." "That's a relief," Temperance said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "We can move back today, then." A flicker of something disappointment crossed Wade's face, but he nodded. "Whenever you're ready. No rush." They ate breakfast together, with Ellie sitting on Wade's lap, enthusiastically grabbing at his bacon. The domesticity of the scene wasn't lost on Temperance how easy it would be to imagine this as their life, their family. As if reading her thoughts, Mrs. Rodriguez said casually, "It is good to have a child in this house again. Too quiet with just Mr. Colt rattling around." Wade gave his housekeeper a pointed look, which she pretended not to notice. After breakfast, Wade excused himself to attend to ranch business, and Temperance helped Mrs. Rodriguez with the dishes before preparing to return to the cottage. As they were gathering Ellie's things, Mrs. Rodriguez said suddenly, "He cares for you, you know." Temperance froze. "Mr. Colt has been very kind." "No," Mrs. Rodriguez interrupted firmly. "Not kindness, more. I have known that man for 8 years. I have never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you and the boy." Temperance didn't know how to respond. Part of her wanted to dismiss the housekeeper's words as wishful thinking, but another part she'd been trying to ignore recognized the truth in them. "My situation is complicated, Mrs. Rodriguez." The older woman's eyes were kind but knowing. "Life is always complicated, child. But sometimes the answer is simpler than we think." She patted Temperance's hand and left her to her thoughts. Back at the cottage, Temperance tried to focus on her sewing, but Mrs. Rodriguez's words kept intruding. Did Wade care for her as more than a charity case or a temporary tenant? And if he did, what then? She had come to care for him too, his kindness, his integrity, the gentle way he was with Ellie. But her past still shadowed her, secrets she hadn't shared that might change how he saw her if he knew. Days passed, and outwardly, nothing changed. Wade continued to be respectful and kind but maintained a careful distance. Temperance threw herself into her work, now including alterations for the general store in town. The turning point came on a hot August afternoon. Temperance had taken Ellie to the small creek that ran through the property, seeking relief from the heat. They sat in the shade of a willow tree, Ellie splashing happily in the shallow water while Temperance watched. The sound of approaching hoofbeats made her look up to see Wade riding toward them. He dismounted gracefully and led his horse to drink from the creek. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, removing his hat. "Please do," Temperance replied, moving over slightly to make room in the shade. Wade settled beside her, watching Ellie play. "He's growing fast," he observed. "Seems like he gets bigger every day." 8 months old now, Temperance said with a smile. "Soon he'll be crawling, then walking. I can hardly believe it. You're doing a fine job with him, Miss Walker." "Thank you, and please, after all this time, I think you could call me Temperance." Wade smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Temperance, then. And I'm Wade, not Mr. Colt." They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching Ellie and the play of sunlight on the water. It was Wade who finally spoke. "There's a social in town next Saturday. Dance at the town hall to raise money for the new schoolhouse." He hesitated, then continued, "I was wondering if you might like to attend, with me, that is." Temperance looked at him in surprise. "You're asking me to accompany you as my guest," Wade said quickly. "No expectations. Just thought you might enjoy an evening out. Mrs. Rodriguez has already volunteered to watch Ellie." Temperance considered his offer. It had been so long since she'd done anything purely for pleasure, and the idea of an evening with Wade, away from the ranch, was undeniably appealing. "I'd like that," she said finally. "Thank you." Wade's smile was worth any risk the outing might entail. "Good, that's good." As they walked back to the house later, Wade carrying Ellie on his shoulders, Temperance found herself looking forward to the social with surprising eagerness. She would need a new dress. Of course she could hardly attend on Wade Colt's arm in one of her too well-worn garments. The week passed in a flurry of preparation. Temperance worked late into the evenings on a new dress, a deep blue cotton with white lace trim. Mrs. Rodriguez lent her a pair of earrings that had belonged to her mother, and Elena Garcia's daughter Rosa offered to arrange her hair. By the time Saturday arrived, Temperance was as nervous as a schoolgirl attending her first dance. Rosa arrived mid-afternoon and spent an hour curling and pinning Temperance's auburn locks into an elegant style. Mrs. Rodriguez fussed over Ellie, assuring Temperance repeatedly that he would be fine for the evening. "You deserve some enjoyment," the housekeeper insisted. "Go, dance, have fun." "We will be perfectly fine." Wade knocked on the cottage door precisely at 6. When Temperance opened it, he stood speechless for a moment, his eyes taking in her appearance with undisguised appreciation. "You look beautiful," he said finally, his voice slightly rough. "Thank you," Temperance replied, feeling a blush rise to her cheeks. Wade himself was handsomely dressed in a dark suit and crisp white shirt, his hair neatly combed and his beard trimmed. After saying goodbye to Ellie, who was contentedly playing on a blanket under Mrs. Rodriguez's watchful eye, they set off for town in Wade's buggy, a more elegant conveyance than the wagon Temperance usually drove. The town hall had been transformed for the occasion with lanterns and bunting. A small band played on a makeshift stage, and tables laden with food and drink lined one wall. Nearly everyone in Red Rock and the surrounding area seemed to be in attendance, and Temperance felt numerous curious gazes upon them as Wade escorted her inside. "Don't mind them," Wade murmured close to her ear. "Small-town curiosity. They're just not used to seeing me with a beautiful woman on my arm." The evening passed in a pleasant blur. Wade introduced her to what seemed like half the county ranchers and their wives, merchants, the banker, the sheriff. Everyone was polite, though Temperance couldn't help noticing the speculative glances some of the women exchanged. When the band struck up a waltz, Wade turned to her with a slight bow. "May I have this dance, Temperance?" She hesitated only briefly before placing her hand in his. "I should warn you, it's been quite some time since I've danced." "Just follow my lead," he said, guiding her onto the floor. Wade proved to be an excellent dancer, leading her confidently through the steps. Temperance soon relaxed into his arms, enjoying the music and the sensation of being held by him. "Where did you learn to dance so well?" she asked as they circled the floor. "My mother insisted all proper gentlemen should know how to waltz," he replied with a smile. "Many tedious lessons as a boy. She'd be proud to see those lessons weren't wasted." They danced several more numbers before taking a break for refreshments. Wade brought her a cup of punch and led her to a relatively quiet corner. "Are you enjoying yourself?" he asked. "Very much," Temperance replied truthfully. "It's been a lovely evening." Wade looked pleased. "Good, I'm glad." A commotion at the entrance drew their attention. A tall, expensively dressed man had entered, flanked by two rough-looking cowboys. Something in Wade's posture changed immediately a tension that hadn't been there before. "Who is that?" Temperance asked quietly. "Victor Blackwell," Wade replied, his voice tight. "Owns the Double B biggest ranch north of here. Not a man I'm fond of." Before Temperance could ask why, Blackwell spotted them and made his way over, a smile that didn't reach his eyes fixed on his face. "Colt," he greeted Wade with a nod. "Didn't expect to see you at a social event. You usually keep to yourself." His gaze shifted to Temperance, openly appraising. "And who is this lovely lady?" Wade's jaw tightened, but his voice remained civil. "Victor Blackwell, may I present Miss Temperance Walker. Miss Walker is a guest at the Circle C." "Charmed," Blackwell said, taking Temperance's hand before she could object and bringing it to his lips. "A pleasure to meet someone who's managed to draw the reclusive Mr. Colt out of his shell." There was something predatory about his gaze that made Temperance instinctively withdraw her hand. "The pleasure is mine, Mr. Blackwell." "Perhaps you'll save a dance for me later, Miss Walker," Blackwell suggested, still ignoring Wade. Before Temperance could respond, Wade stepped slightly forward. "I believe Miss Walker's dance card is full this evening." Blackwell's smile hardened. "Is that so? Pity." He turned his attention back to Wade. "We should discuss that water rights issue soon, Colt. My lawyer tells me there's some ambiguity in the documentation." "There's no ambiguity, Blackwell. The creek runs through my property. We've been over this." Blackwell shrugged. "We'll see. Enjoy your evening." With a final lingering look at Temperance, he moved away to greet the banker. Wade's expression was thunderous. "I apologize for that. Blackwell has been trying to claim water rights to Creek Creek for years. It's just his latest attempt to pressure smaller ranchers." "He seems determined," Temperance observed. "He's used to getting his way. Men like him think money can buy anything or anyone." Wade shook his head as if to clear it. "Let's not let him ruin our evening. Would you care to dance again?" They returned to the dance floor, but the carefree mood of earlier had been dampened. Wade was still attentive, but Temperance could sense his distraction. She couldn't help noticing that Blackwell watched them from the sidelines, his expression calculating. As the evening wore on, Wade gradually relaxed again, especially after Blackwell departed with his men. By the time they left the social near midnight, the unpleasant encounter seemed forgotten. The drive back to the ranch was peaceful, with a nearly full moon lighting their way. Temperance felt a pleasant tiredness, the kind that comes after an enjoyable evening. "Thank you for accompanying me tonight," Wade said as they approached the ranch. "I haven't enjoyed myself so much at a social in years." "I should be thanking you," Temperance replied. "It was wonderful to dress up and dance again. I'd almost forgotten how pleasant it could be." When they reached the cottage, Wade helped her down from the buggy. Mrs. Rodriguez had left a lamp burning in the window, its warm glow welcoming in the darkness. "I should check on Ellie," Temperance said, though she was reluctant for the evening to end. "Of course." Wade hesitated, then took her hand gently in his. "Temperance, He seemed to struggle for words. "I've come to care for you, for both of you, very much." Temperance's heart quickened. "Wade, Before she could continue, he leaned down and kissed her a gentle, questioning kiss that nonetheless sent warmth spreading through her. When he pulled back, his eyes searched hers. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "I shouldn't have presumed." Temperance silenced him by rising on her toes to return his kiss, her hands resting lightly on his chest. This time, the kiss deepened, his arms encircling her waist to draw her closer. When they finally parted, both were breathless. Wade rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that for weeks," he admitted. "I've been wanting you to," she confessed, surprising herself with her boldness. The sound of Ellie crying inside the cottage broke the moment. Temperance reluctantly stepped back. "I should go to him." Wade nodded. "Of course, we can talk tomorrow." He lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. "Good night, Temperance." "Good night, Wade." Inside, Temperance found Mrs. Rodriguez dozing in the rocking chair while Ellie fussed in his crib. The housekeeper woke as she entered. "Ah, you're back. Did you have a nice time?" "Lovely," Temperance replied, lifting Ellie and bouncing him gently to soothe him. "Thank you for watching him." Mrs. Rodriguez smiled knowingly. "Mr. Colt looked very handsome tonight, yes, and you very beautiful, like a real couple." Temperance couldn't help the blush that rose to her cheeks. "It was just a social, Mrs. Rodriguez." "Hum," the housekeeper hummed skeptically as she gathered her things. "Well, this old woman is going to bed. Good night, my dear," after Mrs. Rodriguez left. Temperance changed into her nightgown and settled in the rocking chair with Ellie, who was now calm but still awake. As she rocked him, she touched her lips, still feeling the warmth of Wade's kiss. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Temperance allowed herself to hope to imagine a future where she wasn't alone, where Ellie had a father who loved him, where they belonged somewhere. But as Ellie finally drifted to sleep in her arms, doubt crept in. Wade knew nothing of her past, of the circumstances of Ellie's birth, of the shame that had driven her from Boston. Would he still want her if he knew the truth? Or would the revelation drive him away as it had her family? These questions troubled her dreams, but when morning came, bringing with it the memory of Wade's kiss and the warmth in his eyes, hope once again outweighed her fears. She expected Wade to call at the cottage that morning, but he sent word through one of the hands that an urgent matter required his attention in town. Disappointed but understanding, Temperance focused on her sewing, completing a dress for the banker's wife that was due the following day. It was late afternoon when she heard the sound of horses approaching at speed. Looking out the window, she saw Wade riding hard toward the main house, followed by several of his men. Something was wrong, she could tell by their urgency, the grim set of Wade's jaw as he dismounted. Unable to contain her curiosity and concern, Temperance settled Ellie on her hip and walked quickly to the main house. She found Wade in his study with his foreman, Miguel, and the sheriff from Red Rock. Wade looked up as she appeared in the doorway, his expression softening briefly before turning serious again. "Temperance, I'm sorry, we're in the middle of something important. I saw you ride in. Is everything all right?" Wade exchanged glances with the other men before answering. "We've had some trouble. Cattle gone missing from the north pasture. Sheriff Thompson is helping us sort it out." The sheriff, a weathered man in his 50s, nodded to Temperance. "Madam, sorry to bring trouble to your doorstep. How many head?" Temperance asked. 30, maybe more," Wade replied. "Too many to be strays or predators." "Rustlers?" Wade nodded grimly. "Looks that way. Cut the fence in 2 places. Professional job. Any idea who might be responsible?" Temperance shifted Ellie to her other hip, and the baby gurgled happily, oblivious to the tension in the room. Wade's expression darkened. "I have my suspicions, but no proof yet." The sheriff cleared his throat. "We'll keep looking, Colt. But without witnesses or evidence pointing to specific individuals, there's not much I can do officially." Wade walked the sheriff to the door, speaking in low tones that Temperance couldn't hear. When he returned to the study, his face was grim. "You're thinking it's Blackwell, aren't you?" Temperance asked. "Because of the water rights dispute." Wade looked surprised, then thoughtful. "You're perceptive." "Yes, that's my suspicion. It wouldn't be the first time he's used underhanded tactics to pressure smaller ranchers into selling." "What will you do?" Wade ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she'd come to recognize. "Increase patrols on the property, post men at the creek crossing. Beyond that, not much I can do without proof." He sighed heavily. "I'm sorry about today. I had hoped we might continue our conversation from last night." Temperance stepped closer, adjusting Ellie on her hip. "We still can." Wade's expression softened as he looked at her and Ellie. He reached out to touch the baby's cheek gently. "He's getting sleepy." "It's almost his bedtime," Temperance acknowledged. "I should get him back to the cottage." "May I walk you?" Wade asked. "I'd like that." The evening was pleasant, with a cool breeze offering relief from the day's heat. They walked slowly, Wade occasionally reaching to brush his fingers against Temperance's free hand, the gesture tentative but deliberate. When they reached the cottage, Temperance invited him in while she put Ellie down for the night. Wade waited patiently in the small living area, examining the sewing projects neatly arranged on her work table. Once Ellie was asleep, Temperance joined Wade, suddenly nervous now that they were alone. He seemed equally uncertain, standing awkwardly in the center of the room. "About last night," he began. "I hope I didn't overstep." "You didn't," Temperance assured him quickly. I enjoyed it. Wade's smile was immediate and genuine. So did I. He took a step closer. Temperance, I meant what I said. I care for you both very much, more than I expected to. More than I thought possible after. After your engagement ended, Temperance supplied when he trailed off. Wade looked surprised. Mrs. Rodriguez told you about that, I assume. She mentioned it. Wade shook his head ruefully. That woman doesn't miss much. Yes, after Caroline left. I thought I was done with all that courtship, marriage, family. Threw myself into the ranch instead. His eyes met hers. And then you appeared at the depot with Ali, and somehow everything changed. Temperance felt a pang of guilt. If they were going to have a future together, she needed to be honest with him. Wade, there are things about me, about my past, that you don't know. Things that might change how you feel. Wade stepped closer, taking her hands in his. Nothing could change how I feel, Temperance. But if there's something you need to tell me, I'm listening. Temperance took a deep breath. Ellie's father was a traveling salesman who came through Boston last year. He sold fancy tonics and remedies, had a silver tongue and grand promises. I was working as a companion to an elderly widow, living a respectable but lonely life. He made me feel special, wanted. She paused, the memory still painful. When I told him I was with child, he disappeared. My employer dismissed me. My parents refused to take me in. The scandal would have ruined their social standing. Wade's hands tightened on hers, but his expression remained open, free of judgment. I had some savings, Temperance continued. Enough to survive until Ellie was born. After that, I took whatever work I could find that allowed me to keep him with me. When the opportunity came to head west, I took it. And then the money ran out in Red Rock, and there we were at the depot. She looked up at him, her eyes searching his face for signs of disgust or disappointment. So now you know. I'm not the respectable woman you might have thought I was. Wade was quiet for a long moment, his thumbs moving in gentle circles over the backs of her hands. Is that all? He asked finally. Temperance blinked in confusion. Isn't that enough? Enough for what? To change how I feel about you, to make me think less of you. Wade shook his head. Temperance, you made a mistake in trusting the wrong man. Then you did everything in your power to protect and provide for your child. That shows character, not a lack of it. Tears welled in Temperance's eyes. You don't despise me. Despise you? How could I? Wade released her hands only to cradle her face gently. I admire your strength, your resilience, and if anything, knowing what you've overcome only makes me care for you more. A sob escaped Temperance, a release of tension and fear she'd carried for so long. Wade pulled her against his chest, his arms encircling her protectively. I love you, Temperance Walker, he whispered against her hair. You and Ellie both. I want you to stay not as guests or tenants, but as my family, if you'll have me. Temperance pulled back enough to look up at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. You want to marry me? Wade smiled, wiping away her tears with his thumbs. More than anything. I know it might seem sudden, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you, and I love that boy in there like he was my own flesh and blood. Wade, Temperance's voice caught on a sob. I love you too, but are you sure? There will be talk, speculation about Ellie. Let them talk, Wade said firmly. This is our life, our family. No one else gets a say in it. Joy unlike anything Temperance had ever known flooded through her. She rose on her toes to kiss him, pouring all her love and gratitude into the gesture. Wade responded with equal fervor, lifting her slightly off her feet in his enthusiasm. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Wade pressed his forehead to hers. Is that a yes, then? Yes, Temperance whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Wade's answering smile was radiant. We'll tell Mrs. Rodriguez tomorrow. She'll be insufferable with satisfaction. Temperance laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. She did hint rather heavily that you needed a wife. She wasn't wrong, Wade admitted. This house has been too empty, too quiet for too long. It needs a woman's touch, a child's laughter. He kissed her again softly. It needs you, Temperance. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of preparations. Wade wanted to be married as soon as possible, and Temperance saw no reason to delay. They agreed on a small ceremony at the ranch, with only their closest friends in attendance. Mrs. Rodriguez was indeed insufferably pleased with herself when they shared the news, bustling about making plans and informing Temperance that she'd known from the first day that this would happen. "I saw how he looked at you and the baby," she declared. "A blind woman could have seen it." The news spread quickly through the ranch and into town. Most reactions were positive. The Hands and their wives congratulated them warmly, and many of Temperance's clients expressed delight. There were some raised eyebrows and whispers, of course, particularly regarding Ellie. But Wade's position in the community was such that few dared to openly criticize his choice. Victor Blackwell was a notable exception. He encountered Wade in town one afternoon and made a point of expressing his concerns within earshot of several bystanders. "Here you're taking on another man's leavings, Colt," he drawled, his voice carrying across the general store. "Mighty generous of you, or mighty desperate." Hard to tell which. Wade had nearly come to blows with him, restrained only by the sheriff's timely intervention. When he returned to the ranch and related the incident to Temperance, she was distressed. "I don't want to cause problems for you," she said anxiously. "Perhaps we should wait, give people time to know," Wade cut her off firmly. "We're not changing our plans because of Blackwell or anyone else. I want you as my wife, and Ali as my son. The rest of the world can accept that or not, it makes no difference to me." His determination reassured her, and preparations continued. Temperance sewed her own wedding dress, a simple but elegant creation of ivory silk, with lace trim that Wade had ordered specially from San Antonio. Mrs. Rodriguez enlisted the ranch hands to transform the garden behind the house into a perfect setting for the ceremony, with an arbor of climbing roses marking the spot where they would exchange vows. 2 days before the wedding, Temperance received an unexpected letter. It had been forwarded from the general store in Red Rock, where she received correspondence related to her sewing business. The return address was Boston, and the handwriting was unmistakably her mother's. With trembling hands, she opened it. "My dear daughter, I write after months of silence to express my deepest regret for the manner in which your father and I treated you in your hour of need. There is no excuse for our behavior, though I offer the explanation that we were blinded by social convention and fear of scandal. Your father passed away last month after a brief illness. His final words were of you, expressing sorrow for his hardness of heart. I find myself alone now, reflecting on what truly matters in this life. Family, my dear, not social standing or the opinions of others, is what sustains us in the end. If you can find it in your heart to forgive a foolish, prideful old woman, I would dearly love to know my grandchild and to rebuild our relationship. I understand if this is not possible, but I pray that it might be. With love and profound regret, your mother." Tears streamed down Temperance's face as she read. The letter represented everything she had longed for during those dark, lonely months after Ellie's birth: acknowledgement, remorse, the possibility of reconciliation. Wade found her still sitting with the letter when he returned from his day's work. Without a word, he knelt beside her chair, his hand resting gently on her knee. "My mother," Temperance explained, handing him the letter. "My father has died and she wants to know Ellie." Wade read it carefully, his expression thoughtful. When he finished, he looked up at her. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know," Temperance admitted. "Part of me wants to forgive her, to give Ali a chance to know his grandmother. But another part remembers how they cast me out when I needed them most." "People can change," Wade said gently. "Sometimes it takes a tragedy to show them what truly matters." He took her hands in his. "Whatever you decide, I'll support you. If you want to invite her here, or if you want to visit Boston someday, or if you never want to see her again, it's your choice." Temperance felt a rush of gratitude for his understanding. I think I'll write to her. Tell her about the wedding, about you. Not invite her yet, but open the door to possibility." Wade nodded. "That seems wise. Take your time. We have a lifetime ahead of us to make these decisions." A lifetime. The words filled Temperance with joy and wonder. From the despair of that day at the depot to this moment, planning her wedding to a man who loved her and her son, it seemed almost miraculous. The wedding day dawned clear and mild, a perfect September morning. Mrs. Rodriguez and Elena Garcia helped Temperance prepare, fussing over her hair and dress while cooing over Ellie, who had been dressed in a tiny suit that Wade had commissioned from the tailor in San Antonio. "You look beautiful, Mrs. Rodriguez declared, tears in her eyes as she pinned the final flowers in Temperance's upswept hair. "Like an angel." The ceremony was simple but deeply moving. Temperance walked through the garden to where Wade waited beneath the rose-covered arbor, Illy in her arms. The baby reached for Wade as they approached, and when Temperance reached his side, Wade naturally took the child, holding him with one arm while taking Temperance's hand with his free one. The minister from Red Rock's small church officiated, his words about love, commitment, and family bringing tears to many eyes. When it came time for the vows, Wade handed Illy back to Temperance, then took both her hands in his. "Temperance Walker, I take you as my wife, promising to love, honor, and cherish you for all the days of my life. I pledge to be a father to Illy, to raise him as my own son with all the love and guidance I possess. Together, we will build a home and a life filled with joy, respect, and devotion. This is my solemn vow." Temperance's voice trembled as she responded, "Wade Colt, I take you as my husband, promising to love, honor, and cherish you for all the days of my life. I pledge to stand beside you in all things, to make our house a home, and to raise our family with tenderness and strength. Together, we will face whatever life brings, united in love and purpose. This is my solemn vow." As Wade slipped the simple gold band onto her finger, Temperance felt a sense of completion, of coming home. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Wade kissed her with a tender passion that left no doubt of his love, while Illy, squished between them, giggled in delight. The celebration afterward was joyous, a feast prepared by Mrs. Rodriguez and the ranch wives. Music provided by some of the hands who proved to be talented fiddlers, and dancing that continued until sunset. Wade never strayed far from Temperance's side, his pride and happiness evident in every glance, every touch. As the last guests departed, Wade took Illy from Temperance's arms. "Mrs. Rodriguez has offered to take him for the night," he said softly, "unless you'd prefer to keep him with us." Temperance hesitated only briefly. She had never spent a night away from Illy, but Mrs. Rodriguez adored him, and the cottage had been prepared as a bridal bower with fresh flowers and linens. "He'll be fine with her," she decided, "and we could use the time alone." Wade's eyes darkened with desire. "Yes, we could." They said goodnight to Illy, who was already drowsy in Mrs. Rodriguez's capable arms, then slipped away to the cottage that had been Temperance's home these past months, now transformed with candles, flowers, and a sense of new beginnings. Later, as they lay tangled in the sheets, Temperance rested her head on Wade's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her bare back. "Happy, Mrs. Colt," he murmured. "Completely," she sighed, the new name still strange but wonderful on her ears. "Are you?" Wade tilted her chin up to look into her eyes. "More than I ever imagined possible. You and Ellie. You've given me everything I never knew I was missing. And you've given us a home, a future." Temperance pressed a kiss to his chest. "I never thought I could be this fortunate, not after everything." "It's not fortune," Wade said thoughtfully. "It's where we were meant to be. From the moment I saw you waiting at that depot with Ellie on your lap, something told me you belonged here with me on this land." Temperance smiled, remembering his words from that first day. "You said he would grow up on your land." "Our land now," Wade corrected gently. "And he will. So will any brothers or sisters that might come along." Temperance's heart leapt at the thought. "You want more children with you?" "As many as you're willing to give me." Wade's hand slid to rest on her stomach. "I'd like a little girl with your eyes and that stubborn chin." Temperance laughed softly. "My stubborn chin? It's one of the things I love about you," Wade assured her. "Along with your courage, your kindness, your skill with a needle, and the way you look at me like I'm some kind of hero." "You are," Temperance said seriously. "You saved us that day at the depot, not just from immediate hardship but from a life of uncertainty and struggle." Wade shook his head. "You saved me too, Temperance, from loneliness, from an existence that had purpose but no joy." He kissed her deeply. "We saved each other." 2 years later, Temperance stood on the porch of their home, watching Wade teach Ellie to ride his first pony, a gentle, dappled creature that tolerated the now 3-year-old's enthusiastic attempts at horsemanship with saint-like patience. Ellie's laughter rang out as Wade led the pony in a circle, his small hands clutching the saddle horn, his face a picture of concentration and delight. "Mama, look," he called. "I riding." "I see you, sweetheart," Temperance called back, waving. "You're doing wonderfully." In her arms, 6-month-old Rebecca Grace Colt watched her brother with wide, curious eyes. She had Wade's dark hair but Temperance's green eyes and, according to her father, that same stubborn chin. The past 2 years had brought changes both expected and surprising. Wade's prediction about Victor Blackwell had proven accurate. The water rights dispute had been a pretext for pressuring Wade to sell the northern section of his property. When legal channels failed, Blackwell had indeed resorted to rustling and intimidation. The situation had come to a head 6 months after the wedding, when 2 of Blackwell's men were caught red-handed stealing cattle. Their subsequent confession implicated Blackwell directly, leading to his arrest and eventual conviction. With their leader gone, the Double B Ranch had been sold off in parcels, with Wade acquiring the section adjacent to his property that contained the disputed creek. Temperance's sewing business had flourished to the point where she now employed 2 young women from town to help with the workload. What had begun as a means of survival had become a respected enterprise, with orders coming from as far away as San Antonio for her distinctive embroidery and tailoring. And perhaps most surprisingly, Temperance's mother had come to visit the previous spring, a nervous, subdued woman bearing gifts and remorse in equal measure. The reunion had been initially awkward but ultimately healing, with Elizabeth Walker falling instantly in love with her grandson and forming an unexpected friendship with Mrs. Rodriguez. She had returned to Boston with promises to visit again soon, perhaps even to consider relocating permanently to be near her growing family. Wade completed the circuit with Ellie and the pony, then lifted the boy down to the ground. "That's enough for today, partner. You did real well." "More tomorrow?" Ellie asked eagerly. "You bet," Wade promised, ruffling the boy's dark curls. "You'll be outridden me before you know it." He ran to Temperance, his face flushed with excitement. "Mama, Papa says I can ride again tomorrow." "I heard." Temperance smiled, bending awkwardly with the baby to kiss his forehead. "Why don't you go wash up for dinner? Mrs. Rodriguez made your favorite apple cobbler for dessert." He needed no further encouragement, racing into the house with the boundless energy of childhood. Wade followed more slowly, leading the pony back toward the corral before joining Temperance on the porch. "He's a natural," Wade said proudly. "Got a good seat and no fear." "Like his father," Temperance observed, leaning into Wade's side as he wrapped an arm around her and the baby. Wade pressed a kiss to her temple, then one to Rebecca's downy head. "I was thinking, with the new land and the increase in the herd, we might need to expand the house. Add another bedroom or two." Temperance looked up at him with a raised eyebrow. "Are you planning on more children, Mr. Colt?" Wade's slow smile was full of promise. "Well, Mrs. Colt, I did say I wanted as many as you're willing to give me, and we make mighty fine babies together." Temperance laughed. "That we do. Though perhaps we should wait until Miss Rebecca here is walking before we start planning the next one." "No rush," Wade agreed amiably. "We have all the time in the world." As they stood together on the porch of the home they had built, their children safe and their future secure, Temperance thought back to that desperate day at the Red Rock Depot, how close she had come to turning down Wade's offer. How different their lives might have been if fear had won out over hope. "What are you thinking about?" Wade asked, noting her thoughtful expression. "About fate," Temperance replied. "About how the worst day of my life led me to the best days I could imagine." Wade tightened his arm around her. "I think about that too sometimes. How many small decisions, how many chances had to align for us to find each other." He turned her gently to face him. "I'm grateful for every one of them, even the painful ones, because they brought us here." Temperance rose on her toes to kiss him, their daughter gurgling happily between them. "So am I." From inside the house came the sound of Ali chattering excitedly to Mrs. Rodriguez about his riding lesson, the clatter of dinner preparations, the comfortable noises of a home filled with love. "We should go in," Temperance said, "before Ali talks poor Mrs. Rodriguez's ear off." Wade nodded but held her for one moment more. "I love you, Temperance Colt, and I love you, Wade Colt, always." Hand in hand, they walked into their home, into the future they had built together, a future that had begun with a simple act of kindness at a dusty train depot. With a desperate mother, a fatherless child, and a cowboy with a heart big enough for them both.